Our reading today comes to us from the Old Testament prophet Isaiah, chapter 35, verses 1 to 10. Let's be attentive to the word of the Lord. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus, it shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. Strengthen the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who are fearful of heart, be strong, do not fear. Here is your God. He will come with vengeance and with terrible recompense. He will come and save you. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. For waters shall break forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. The haunt of jackals shall become a swamp. The grass shall become reeds and rushes. A highway shall be there, and it shall be called the holy way. The unclean shall not travel on it, but it shall be for God's people. No traveler, not even fools, shall go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come upon it. They shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the ransom of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy will be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. Please be seated. Last week, one of our adult kids gave me a call. Said, "Dad, can you talk? I don't know if I'm going to be able to even make it till Christmas with what I'm feeling, so I want to talk to somebody about it. Can you talk?" Absolutely. I got on a video call with our oldest child, and our oldest child asked me how I can have hope in times like these. Our oldest is one of those kind of people who feel the pain of the world, and there is a lot of pain in the world right now, and it's overwhelming, and they just needed some hope. They've heard me say before that I am professionally obligated to hope, and they wanted to know how I can do that. How can I think or believe that there is anything good in the world right now? The vast majority of us, I think it should be said, the vast majority of us can't affect the course of society. Our scope is not that big. Our influence is not that big. And so we read the news, we watch the news, we listen to the news, we get on, God forbid, social media, and we see the news, and it is easy to have hopelessness pervade our lives. There's so much happening, and we think there's nothing we can do about that. And so we sit in our, as the Bible would refer to it, our muck and our mire, and we worry, and we don't see how anything is getting better. I'm sure that a lot of the ancient Hebrews felt like that. That's who Isaiah was talking to. During this portion of the book of Isaiah, Isaiah is talking to those who are in exile. They have been in exile. They've been in exile for a long time. Many of them were born in exile. And I am sure that they are feeling a version of hopelessness. We've been here for so long. I thought, God, you promised that we would get to go home. It's not getting any better. Well, now it's time to go home. And the prophet is talking to them. And the prophet is describing what it will be like for them to go home, to leave this place of hopelessness that they've been living in and to go back to the promised land. And the prophet talks in glorious, glorious ways about what that will be like. The desert shall rejoice and bloom. The lame will leap. The deaf will hear. People will sing. And there will be a highway made just for them to go from exile back to home. But the prophet wants to make sure that we understand that before we set out on this journey, we have to prepare to go on that journey. And so the prophet says there in verses 3 and 4, strengthen the weak hands. There are going to be those who need to have their hands strengthened so they can carry what they need back home. Make firm the feeble knees. Reassure those who fear. Don't worry, the Lord is coming. The Lord will save us. The prophet is saying there's nothing we can do about the big wider world, but we can narrow the scope and we can look at our siblings and we can say, have hope. I will help you. I will help carry you. I will strengthen your weak hands. I will be a shoulder for you to lean on. I will make firm your feeble knees. Narrow the scope. Narrow the scope. Today we are narrowing the scope. Today on this You Are Loved Service Sunday, that's what we are doing. We are narrowing the scope. There is a lot in this world that needs fixing. There is a lot in the world that needs fixing. There is a lot in the world that needs addressing. And many of us in this room, and many of us not in this room, we do not have the capacity to affect those things. We've done what we can, but for the most part, we can't affect that. But what we can do is narrow the scope. We can do important things today by narrowing the scope. We can go to serve our friends at the day shelter, at the Homeless Alliance, and we can, in a sense, strengthen weak hands, make firm feeble knees, and reassure those we meet that the Lord is coming and that the Lord will save us. What we are doing today is not meaningless. It is not unimportant, even though the scope has been narrowed. In fact, I think it is a version of what the prophet told the people to do with one another, support one another, care for one another. Today, we get to bring hope to people by treating them as people who deserve dignity and respect. All people deserve dignity and respect. And our friends today get so much less of that than you and I do. That's an absurd thing to even say, right? We get to show dignity and respect to our friends. We get to narrow the scope. The prophet told the people that when you narrow the scope, when you strengthen weak hands and make firm feeble knees, when you reassure those who fear, people will rejoice. Friends, it is our fervent hope that today, by serving someone, even in a small way, may rejoice. The prophet was not naive. He knew it was going to be a long way back to the Holy Land. And he said that's why God would create a holy highway in the wilderness. It is a journey. It is a journey that requires us to walk it. It will take effort on our part, but God has done what God has promised to do to make the way straight. Friends, let's join together today. Let's strengthen weak hands, make firm feeble knees. Let's reassure those that there is nothing to fear, that God is coming and that God will save us. God has provided the way. How do you have hope in times like these? Narrow the scope. Look at what you can do and do it. Friends, let's be the hands and feet of Christ on this day. Thanks be to God.